The afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of the theater, casting long shadows across the empty seats. Backstage, Maria Santos stood with hands trembling slightly as she clutched a worn photograph. The image was soft at the edges from years of handling, capturing her Lola Carmen smiling beneath a flowering seguita tree back home in the Philippines. At 22, Maria was small in stature, but carried dreams that felt impossibly large. She had crossed an ocean to stand on this stage, leaving behind the familiar sounds of her village, the scent of jasmine rice from her mother's kitchen, and the warm embrace of a family who believed in her when she struggled to believe in herself. This talent competition was a world apart from anything she had known. The lights were blinding, the stage vaster than her entire school auditorium. In the judges' seats sat people whose names she had only seen on television, individuals who could launch careers with a single decision. Among them was Simon Cowell, a man whose reputation for being hard to impress preceded him. Maria had watched countless clips of his skeptical expression shifting to surprise, his doubtful gaze transforming into delight. She knew thousands had stood before him, hoping for a chance, only to walk away disappointed. Her journey had begun in a small town outside Manila, where electricity flickered and internet connections wavered like candles in the wind. Music had been her constant companion during long evenings when the world felt either too quiet or too loud. She sang while washing clothes by hand, her voice rising above the sound of water and soap. She hummed melodies while helping her mother sell vegetables at the market, transforming mundane moments into something beautiful. Her grandmother had been the first to recognize the gift. Lola Carmen would sit in her rocking chair, eyes closed, listening as Maria sang old Filipino folk songs and modern ballads alike. "You have something special, Anak," she would say, using the Tagalog word for child. "Your voice carries more than just notes. It carries feeling. It carries truth." When Lola Carmen passed away 2 years prior, Maria felt a piece of herself vanish. The woman who had encouraged her, who saved coins in a jar labeled Maria's Dream, who believed without question, was gone. The loss pressed against her chest, making even breathing feel difficult. For months, Maria stopped singing altogether. The joy drained away and replaced by aching absence. But gradually, she came to understand that music wasn't just something her grandmother had given her. It was something they shared, a connection that would persist even across the distance between life and death. The competition application had arrived almost by accident, a link sent by a friend urging her to try. Maria hesitated, doubt whispering in her ear. Who was she to compete on such a stage? Her English wasn't perfect, her clothes weren't expensive, and she lacked professional training, but she had her voice and her grandmother's memory. Sometimes that had to be enough. Now, standing in the wings, Maria heard the muffled sounds of the audience settling into their seats. She felt the vibration of footsteps on the stage floor. A stage manager called her name, 5 minutes until her life potentially changed forever or remained exactly the same. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, half in English and half in Tagalog, a linguistic blend that felt as natural as moving between her two worlds. When the stage manager touched her shoulder and said, "You're on," Maria walked forward, her simple, pale blue dress swaying with each step. She had chosen the color carefully, reminiscent of the sky above her village. Emerging from darkness into the blinding lights, she felt momentarily exposed and vulnerable. The audience seemed to stretch to infinity, thousands of faces watching, waiting. At the judges' table, Simon Cowell leaned back, his expression neutral and unreadable. The other judges smiled encouragingly, but she knew their opinions wouldn't carry the same weight as his. "Hello," Maria said into the microphone, her accent coloring the simple word. "My name is Maria Santos, and I am from the Philippines." One judge responded warmly, "Welcome, Maria. What will you be singing for us today?" She took a steadying breath. "I will sing Defying Gravity. It is a song about believing in yourself when others do not, about flying even when the world tells you to stay on the ground." She noticed Simon shift slightly, his eyebrows raising a fraction. This was no easy song. It demanded power, control, and deep emotion. Many had attempted it. Few had made it their own. The music began softly, building gradually. Maria closed her eyes momentarily, finding her center where fear transformed into courage. When she opened them again, she was no longer just a girl from a small town. She embodied every person who had ever dared to dream beyond their circumstances. Her voice emerged gently at first, carrying the opening lines with a tenderness that drew people in. She sang not with technical perfection, but with something deeper, something emanating from her core. Each word became a declaration, a refusal to be limited by expectation or circumstance. As the song built toward its climax, something shifted inside her. The backstage nervousness melted away, replaced by pure expression. Her voice soared, filling every corner of the massive theater, reaching notes that seemed impossible for someone so small. She sang of defying gravity, and in that moment she truly was flying. In the judges' seats, Simon Cowell sat forward, his typical composure cracking. His mouth opened slightly, genuine surprise evident on his face. This wasn't the polished performance of a trained vocalist. This was raw, authentic, undeniable. This was someone who sang, not for fame, but because music was as necessary as breathing. The final note hung in the air, sustained and pure, before Maria let it fade naturally. For a moment, complete silence enveloped the theater, the kind of silence that comes when people are too moved to react immediately, when something has touched them so deeply that applause feels insufficient. Then the eruption came. The audience rose to their feet, their cheers washing over Maria like a wave. She stood on stage, tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the response, by the release of tension, by the fulfillment of a dream she had almost been too afraid to pursue. Simon Cowell pressed his buzzer, and suddenly golden light rained down from above, the golden buzzer, reserved for performances that transcended mere talent. Maria looked up, watching the confetti fall like metallic rain, and she thought of her grandmother, of coins in a jar, of faith that had carried her across oceans. Later, after the hugs and congratulations, after the interviews and tears, Maria found a quiet moment alone. She took out the photograph of her Lola and traced her finger along the worn edges. "I did it," she whispered into the silence. "I flew." And somewhere in the space between memory and music, between past and present, she felt her grandmother smile.